The United States said it does not support recent Israeli airstrikes in Syria, signaling clear displeasure over the escalating tensions. This comes as Israeli jets struck government targets in Damascus and southern Syria, demanding a full withdrawal of Syrian forces from Druze-populated areas. Syrian interim President Ahmed al-Sharaa has accused Israel of attempting to fracture the country's unity, while vowing to protect the Druze minority. Meanwhile, the U.S. State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce said Washington remains committed to fostering calm and continued discussion on integration in Syria. Let's listen into what Tammy Bruce, the U.S. State Department spokesperson, had to say.
We are actively engaging all constituencies in Syria to navigate toward calm and continued discussions on integration and a stable, more prosperous future for Syrians. And that continues. That has been the mission.
Now we're joined by Dr. Pansara Amarasinghe. He's Kotalawala Defense University, joining us live from Colombo, Sri Lanka. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to NewsX World. What does this U.S.'s condemnation of Israeli airstrikes in Syria signal about changing dynamics in Washington and Tel Aviv relations?
Well, actually, I think more than a changing dynamic, we need to understand the U.S. strategy towards Syria since the collapse of the Assad's regime in December. U.S. has taken rather strategically oriented, a grounded policy towards Damascus, even though the interim president, Ahmed al-Sharaa, has a jihadi past, who seems to be an Islamic militant. Still, Trump has taken quite a realist approach towards Syria, as how Americans behaved with the Afghan Mujahideen when Mujahideen was, when they were supported by the Americans in the peak of the Cold War. But this strategy has been undermined by the recent escalation espoused by the Israel. But we must understand, I don't think so, as you pointed out, there would be changing dynamics between Jerusalem and Washington, D.C. On the contrary, what we can see is the fact that there is a considerable Druze population living in Israel. So Israelis cannot completely ignore the demands, whatever the grievances coming from the Druze. The Israeli IDF has a considerable Druze fighters, and most of the Druze are Israeli citizens. At the same time, if you look at Syria, there is an overwhelming minority, approximately 1 million Druze living in certain provinces of Syria, who are being subjected to harassment after this interim government came into power. So there is this instability that propels Israel to take the military measures, especially if you just listen to what Benjamin Netanyahu and the IDF the spokesperson stated recently. So Israelis have clearly stated that as long as Ahmed al-Sharaa's government is not doing anything to safeguard its Druze minorities, Israel will continue its airstrikes in Syria until the Druze get secured. So this seems to be a kind of, the upsetting scenario for what Donald Trump proposed and what Donald Trump plans from Syria, because Trump, on the contrary, wants to have a strategic vision towards the Middle East by making kind of a very much aligned pro-Western government in Damascus. But then again, I have my own doubts about that, because if Trump has read the political history of perhaps from Central Asia or maybe from the Middle East, he would definitely understand that whatever the puppet government that the pro-Western government that the Western countries are trying to initiate in the Middle East will eventually boomerang upon them. So we have classic examples from places like Afghanistan and Iraq.
And Dr. Pansara, do you think that it is realistically possible for the U.S. to intervene and make peace in Syria?
Well, I think from a practical perspective, U.S. seems to be the only partner who has larger capacity, larger stances in terms of restoring the governing structure of Syria, because United States has already lifted its sanctions in Syria from June, and the U.S. State Department has made a statement affirming the Washington's continuous support towards Syria, so which is quite a good move. But at the same time, we need to understand, Benjamin Netanyahu is supposed to meet Donald Trump in the coming weeks. So there can be certain shifts from the Washington side if latter can persuade Israeli leader to be more lenient towards the Syrian conflict, because at the same time we can't forget that Israel has been occupied, it has been involved in military escalations in multi fronts. So they were attacking Iran and they were having a hard time with Hamas. At the same time, they consistently attacked Lebanon, and now they have opened another military front in Syria.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we stay on this topic. Now we move on to our next news. The United Nations has